Fendi like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. Welcome back. It is Mr. Fox of the I Refuse podcast. Thank you for joining us again. Shout out Justice for Kendrick Johnson and Justice for Tamala Houseford. So, if you haven't already been paying attention, it is confirmed that Nicki Minaj will be the host of the upcoming Real Housewives of Potomac reunion. Two things I want to take away from this. First is there was speculation months ago that she would be the host, which is typically reserved for Andy Cohen. He's been the de facto host of the Housewives reunions, New York, Orange County, Beverly Hills, Atlanta. And me being a fanatic of Housewives of Atlanta and Housewives of Potomac, because I'm rooting for everybody black. And sometimes I would step over into Beverly Hills to see what Garcella's giving. This is interesting. My views have changed in light of the Jennifer Hugh situation. My heart goes out to that woman, and I will never stop championing for victims of assault and rape and side-eyeing the entire fuck out of women, men, family members, wives who enable, endorse, and support allegedly abusers of women. With that being said, I am not excited. I am not pleased that this is actually happening, that she will actually be the host. Also, being that I am a business student, a business major, I view this as PR damage control. It's not lost on me that she is or has been in the studio working on a new album as a follow-up to Queen, and this is definitely a reach because, like I said, Andy Cohen has been the de facto host of Housewives franchise reunions. And for the most part, he doesn't hit as hard as he should. He doesn't necessarily take people to task. It was only recently that he did it with, I believe her name is Dorit or Erica, the blonde lady, one of the blondes, because there's about 500 of them in California, Tino Shade. I believe she was married to the older gentleman who's now facing serious jail time for financial crimes, allegedly. From the little trailer clip that I've seen from that reunion, he was letting her have it. But it's not lost on me that Andy kind of plays or tries to play us. He tried to play Monique in the last reunion last year, trying to imply that she needed the money or something. And, that was a running theme on the show the moment Monique got on Potomac Housewives. And Andy has a tendency on reunion shows and on Watch What Happens Live to try to start some mess, continue some mess by bringing up a person's history as a comedian. Remember, he tried to play Titus Burgess on Watch What Happens Live by trying to stir the pot when Titus was on there promoting the Dolomite movie, and Eddie Murphy was the lead as Dolomite. And because it's, cancel culture is a big deal, Andy tried to reiterate or rehash some of Eddie Murphy's comedy routine from one of his comedy specials in the 80s, and some of the homophobic jokes, which is common in comedy at the time, and wanted to know that Titus's how was Eddie on set? Was he pleasant to work with? Was he nice? And Titus clapped back. Yeah, we're not, as dumb as y'all think. Like, we don't fall for the traps. This is a new day. People grow up. But Andy's known to do that kind of stuff. So for the host to be Nicki Minaj, it'll be interesting to see how the women of Potomac conduct themselves. And when I say the women, I'm not worried about Ashley or Karen or Mia or Wendy. I'm more so concerned about how Candiace will conduct herself. It's finally dawning on the rest of the women that this is a problem. The provocative mouth, the way that she goes out of bounds with her digs, and the digs are not even all the way clever or creative. She starts off on 1,000 with the mouth. And understand that you're upset. You feel like the person has ruined this beautiful girls trip that you put together. But it's not that deep. Like, there are two scenarios that are common with housewife shows. We're all at the dinner table, something happens. We go on a girls trip, something happens. In between, not a whole lot drama really comes out of just sitting there. So there will be plenty of girls trips, and you had enough time to be diplomatic and to be, very mature with your words. Now, for Giselle to be on Watch What Happens Live post salad tossing and rock with Mia and make it a point to finally come to the realization that we've all had for like 2 or 3 seasons. Candiace's mouth is a trash can, and she does go out of bounds. And for me as a viewer, it's clear that it's her deflecting and her lashing out instead of looking in herself while she's at the mirror putting post-its on the mirror. And it's unfortunate because she's a sweet girl and she has her moments, and for the most part she is a great friend, a great supporting character, right? Because like I say, Giselle is the main character, and she's good for TV, but there's no balance. There really is no balance. So it'll be interesting to see, given Candiace's performances at previous reunions, to see how she'll conduct herself in front of Nicki Minaj. Because, it's Nicki Minaj. She has a lot of personality. She's quick on her feet. And she can casually throw shade, like on the level of like a Kenya Moore or a Nene Leakes or a Portia. And I'm pretty sure a lot of them will probably stan or be starstruck, but I will be not conducting myself with it. I'll be probably on Twitter, and there'll be bits and pieces that'll be going out. So far this season has really been really interesting. There are two things at play. You know, Candiace continues to hold a grudge towards some of the women or be indifferent towards some of the women as a fallout from last season. And it'll be interesting as the rest of the season plays out how the women will see Candiace and when they finally come to that, lightning is striking twice. And will they come to realize that, you know, Candiace is the common denominator in the elevation of conflict and the elevation of discourse that plays against what it means to be a unit, what it means to be an adult, what it means to be harmonious. It's never quite a balance or a medium with Candiace. It's cute that there are little moments on the season so far, where Wendy is trying to force this new personality and trying to appear as though that things are cool, but not really giving much else as far as family life. And it'll be interesting to see how, the going back and forth on both sides of the stage will play out if, Nicki will allow that. And how, the women will speak to Nicki and how the banter and the energy will go. I'm very curious as to why or what the process was in having her be host all of a sudden. They actually had her get, the Pope. Because, her views were in opposition, allegedly. So, I will continue to watch Potomac Housewives, and I'm sure at some point there will be a trailer of the reunion, and I will walk away with that. I will walk away with that. I do not, like I said, support enablers of abusers and abuse, no matter how you paint it. Piggybacking off of a previous video I made on my channel, and I don't play when it comes to that. Like, it's a whole nother layer of abuse to keep going and to try to silence somebody or coerce somebody into with fear and threats of life and bodily harm. That's just a whole nother layer of chaos that I can't endorse, and I refuse to. And coupled with how she allegedly conducts herself with bloggers and, the current civil thing. Mind games and gaslighting are no joke. Like, people will try to toy with that. And that's a whole nother layer of abuse that I'm sure a lot of people are not even aware of. And people do it with ease, and it's up to us to point it out if and so we want to or present a new change. I know a lot of us, like myself, want to protect our energy and our self-care and our mental health. And by choosing us first, we just choose not to engage. Just say what you have to say. I know the truth. And walk away. Moving on from that bit of news, I also wanted to discuss the recent Dave Chappelle controversy around his last special for Netflix and his current deal. I watched. The special, I believe it's called The Closer, on Netflix. We watched it. What's today? Today is Friday, so we watched it. I believe Tuesday, or Wednesday. No, we watched it Wednesday. So I watched the whole entire thing. It's probably one of his shorter ones. Watched it in its entirety. Now, it was funny. One of his more thought provoking ones. And what people need to understand is with Dave Chappelle, you're not going to get a whole lot of laughs. Dave Chappelle is one of the more thought provoking comedians. But he frames what makes Dave Chappelle special as far as a comedian is that he frames his set or his words in a way that he kind of plays into people's sensibilities, but he comes back out with not only the point, but also something deeper than that. Now, he did at some point in his special refer back to Sticks and Stones and the controversy from that special. And he kept reiterating throughout his special that he loves the LGBTQ community. And he even brings into this special points or experiences he's experienced while working on the road in small venues. As long as he has instances where he has worked a venue and there are trans people in the audience, just like he did in the previous, Sticks and Stones, where he worked a joke and, because some people take it at face value instead of letting it marinate, one or two times people have stood up and made a bigger scene and made it more serious than what it actually is. And while I understand that, each person's experience something in their life, that doesn't outrightly mean that the next person that you do not know is ignorant or afraid, because phobia defined is fear, and it's a slippery slope, without critical thinking, that people that A are comedians and B, a lot of comedians are thought provoking outside of being observational. So Dave Chappelle comes from a place that it's about the human experience. And while he plays into the very thing that you have an issue with, if you still walk away, given all the context in that special, as well as his other specials, that he is transphobic, that he is a TERF, that he is an anti-Semite, that he is what's, I guess, some people call a reverse racist, you're totally missing the point. As someone that has followed Dave Chappelle's career since the early 90s, including his multiple appearances on Def Comedy Jam, he has really come a long way. And, most of his material, his earlier material, the key is that he frames sensitive issues, and in this particular special, especially when referring to the baby situation, like, the baby got canceled or more fire for what he said towards or about the community than he did about actually killing somebody in a Walmart. Like, actual life loss versus you being offended or upset, which the feeling and emotion comes and goes, but actual life loss, not a beat skipped, not a protest started, not a petition signed, not an offense or a gasp made. No controversy really around that. Um, but he gets on the mic and says a couple of things, which I believe I had spoken about that in an earlier video too, where it was just like, I wasn't affected, but see, I am an older gay person, and I was younger through the AIDS crisis, right? Um, a lot more lives lost. However, I did not necessarily find it wholly offensive. Um, I'm sure it offended a lot of people because I'm from the position that we are so much more than the negative stuff. We are so much more than the stereotype and the ignorance, and I know that the first reaction is not to be offensive and write somebody off. The first reaction is to have a conversation and to be adults and educate people. Like, we don't learn by just standing in our position and doing a bunch of this and judging. It's interesting. The ironic thing is that we ourselves are an oppressed community by society as a whole, yet we still continue to perpetuate nuanced oppression on other demographics. Uh, you know, straight people, minorities, um, stemming from a disagreement or not even taking the steps to be open and accepting, which is something we stomp on and stomp with in protest against society. Like, how is it we do this on a regular basis every week, every month, on the streets with the flags and pride parades, yet we, in our private life, we do it to each other. And, you know, at this point, it's kind of like political and posturing. You know, in this community, we cherry pick, you know, nepotism, favorites, what have you, out of benefit for us. You know, minorities as a whole in the community are used to, you know, as a tool to appear inclusive. But when the cameras stop flashing and the lights go down, it's a different story. But yet, the moment a rapper or an entertainer or a celebrity of some kind says something that we may take at face value. I don't know why I say we, but we take at face value and we don't agree with, and we're instantly on that cancel button. Or we say something to the effect that questions their existence, like, who are they anyway? What's a DaBaby? Not special. They tried to do that. They tried to do that with Joni Mitchell when a story came out that she, when there was mention that people wanted Taylor Swift to play her in a biopic, Joni Mitchell. It was quoted that Joni Mitchell said something to the effect of, "Well, if she's gonna have to sing, good luck." And then people were like, "Well, who's Joni Mitchell?" See what I mean? So, for people to like, again, after the Dave Chappelle special came out, all these stories came out of people wanting to cancel him over his comments. It was clear that they did not actually watch the special because whether like the first 5 minutes or bits and pieces, because people will actually do that. People will actually, of an hour and a half, 2 hour special, which, I mean, that's more than enough time to actually think and marinate and actually understand, the critical thinking kick in. For people to be like, okay, I get it. But people will take like 30 seconds. And the media does the same thing. They'll take a 30-second clip, post it on Twitter, and get a conversation started with a caption. And then, the bandwagon will go into the comment section and not only piggyback off of the caption, but in some ways validate their prejudice against, whoever. And Dave Chappelle has been the receiving party of that. Think he cares? He doesn't. But I'm willing to bet all of my retirement that is the case here. For those of us that actually watched the roughly an hour special, towards the latter half, and I'm sure Dave Chappelle frames his specials that way to where he'll say the topical stuff in the first half because he knows people that are offended or are have the short attention spans will only watch bits and pieces of the first half and then run to social media or run to a blog or the media with a particular narrative. In the second half of his special, he mentions his friend Daphne, who started out as a patron of one of the venues where he was doing one of his smaller sets and made it a point to make a scene with her offense and elevate the ambiance or the what's supposed to be a comedic, artful environment to a very dramatic level. Again, not really marinating and letting the joke be a joke. But at some point, Dave Chappelle remembered Daphne, right? Daphne was a transgender person, and emphasis on was, and I'll get to that. At some point, before he went out on the road, he called Daphne and invited her to be an opening on his tour. I believe some of the dates. Daphne went out on the first date as the opener and essentially bombed for 45 minutes. However, at some point, Daphne sat up front while Dave was doing his set for the rest of the show. And, Dave did his set, and during the course of his set, which was similar to the one that was in the special, Daphne laughed her ass off. And at some point, there was a heckler in the audience and directed their heckling towards Daphne as far as something very personal. Do the carpet match the drapes? And Daphne, without batting an eye, said, "I don't have carpet, I have hardwood floors." And the venue went wild. And Chappelle, at that point, Dave Chappelle saw something very special about Daphne, and as far as comedy, like, he was not above mentoring her and speaking to her uh, offline and giving her pointers about being a comedian. And at some point, Daphne, for the rest of the tour, became a great comedian and an opening act. Now, at some point, there was a situation on social media where Daphne was a target, and that went along the lines of, I believe, a family member in Daphne's family passing away. Now, Dave couldn't speak to what situation influenced what ended up happening, um, or, whether it was like the social media harassment or the passing of the family member or anything else that Daphne was personally struggling with that caused things for the ending the way that it did. But, the last third, maybe the last 15 minutes of his set, Dave Chappelle made it a point to end on the fact that it's about the human experience. And he very much humanized Daphne and was affected by Daphne. Daphne was a great human being. And I'm sure that a lot of people that are looking to cancel Dave Chappelle didn't even get to that part of the special. Again, people like to cherry pick conveniently, not surprisingly, to present a narrative to down another person. Earlier I talked about abuse, talked about gaslighting and mind games, and the power of social media. You put those all in a pot, and you stir and you stir and you stir, and then you have something like this that plays out. I've been on the receiving end of it, and it was very entertaining and eye-opening to see people piggyback and bandwagon off of that and actually weaponize that against me. So I know what it's like. But again, harkening back to mental health and self-care, if you can look yourself in the mirror and be comfortable with who and what you are and how you do things, and you can sleep easy at night, there's nothing an outside person can tell you to illustrate otherwise or convince you of otherwise. No amount of privilege, no amount of resources, no amount of validation and acceptance by way of behaving and doing those kind of things on social media will change the truth of who you are. As I get on this episode and continue in my feelings and my opinions and the point I'm trying to make when covering topics that I believe are very important to have a discussion around, as an effort to reach some common ground of knowledge and wherewithal. The other takeaway that I wanted to explore when looking at Nicki Minaj being the host of a Potomac reunion, to add to previous points I made in the video earlier, is that, as a whole, I wonder what having a celebrity as a host of a channel mainstay such as a reality reunion would mean for the brand as a whole, especially one that is been consistently problematic as recent as a few weeks ago. Um, and to know that there's a timeline, to have a celebrity that may or may not have knowledge, has not probably interacted or had conversations around reality TV, but all of a sudden gets this opportunity, which allegedly stems from the moment she went on social media and said she wanted to be the host of the Potomac reunion the day after she got the job. This is where privilege and accessibility, associated with privilege, and privileges that come with being a name, a product, a brand, a beacon for views. That's another layer of consideration I thought about. I was like, you know, not really at any particular point did reality TV really intertwine with artists from other avenues, like legitimate, talented musicians, artists, models, unless it was like a particular reality show dedicated to that particular industry. For example, like another America's Next Top Model. You knew going in, this is what it's about. Of course, it makes sense to have a supermodel be behind it and be in front of the camera. But reality TV, specifically the Housewives shows, is just an individual, entity, far many worlds away from other forms of entertainment. So, it's clear that, like I said, it was a PR move and marketing, and it, in my opinion, just kind of crosses the lines of, seeking further, validation or acceptance in other areas of entertainment. Because, quiet as it's kept, while there are a lot of people out here that watch reality TV, some celebrities admit it, and I'll go further and say there are a lot of other people that do as well. Because, for example, you'd have to be aware of the Kardashians and what they bring, and that comes from watching their reality show in order for you to not like them or like them. I mean, I'm a firm believer that there's no bigger fan than a hater. So it's like it works. While it works better for, I guess, the brand and the marketing and the potential for a better reach, because the Barbs are going to light up, or they've already started lighting up the hashtag Real Housewives of Potomac, and it's going to be a huge mess. They're already circulating on Twitter from the standpoint of blind loyalty, where they're going to keep repping her up and pushing her up, without much consideration of the human condition. uh, and any emotional connection to reality. And it's a slippery slope because outside of music, it's like there's a reality out here that's going on, and it's at some point at the end of the day you're gonna have to. It's too big. It's too big, and the perception is when you continue to support and back her, you're also repping and endorsing everything that is around her. And I'm speechless. And then, going back to the Dave Chappelle stand up, it's. Now, I was reading an article today. I just finished reading the article by a showrunner or showrunner of Dear White People, who transitioned during the pandemic, and I felt, while I felt for her, I think it's important that we watch art in its entirety and ultimately take it as art. When I read the article, I couldn't help but think back to the early 90s when a lot of people blamed rap music for gun violence, for drugs, for violence against women, for police brutality, for school shootings, rap music, rock music. At some point, Eminem was the focus of that when, it was tied to like overdosing and like the drug crisis, right? Never once, and it was ironic because, you know, it was some of those people that were going against it and kind of blaming the music for that were people on the Hill, the very people that have the influence and the resource and the power to enable laws and protections for people that are out here living and are directly affected and experience the very crimes that they're victims of. Um, at in my life, from what I've seen, I've seen this. I don't even know what you want to call it. That the line of thinking where we connect or we try to hold artists and celebrities responsible for our realities. But, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, in my lifetime, people were blaming, were trying to blame the media for crime and, those narratives. And then, parents were trying to hold musicians responsible for their parenting. And I'm like they will actually walk up to celebrities after shows or musicians after shows, or they'll actually go to shows with an issue and then bring it up to the person after the show. Like, parents would actually go up to, say, for example, Janet Jackson about, whatever happened to Let's Wait a While. You're out here now talking, telling our kids about having sex and such like that. And she was like, I'm in my 30s. How long do you want me to wait? And she was like, parents really look to us to raise their kids. And I was like, I have listened to Eddie Murphy's Raw, Eddie Murphy's Delirious. Um, I have watched Dave Chappelle stand up, like I said, since Def Jam. Uh, and then, for what it's worth, Chris Rock's Bigger and Badder. Um, I Ain't Never Scared. Listen to NWA. Listen to Madonna and Lil Kim and Biggie and all this other stuff. N words up and down, left and right. Never use it towards another person. And what I've realized growing up is that people cherry pick who to be offended by. Like they give Janet Jackson a lot of hell throughout her entire career, and even more so since the Super Bowl incident. They gave Lil Kim hell in the early point of her career about the lyrics and the sexuality, but literally the same energy died down around that same time when Madonna found the ray of light. But the energy was different. But you want to give all this energy to Kim and Janet like they were the first. And mind you, we're supposed to be more progressive these days, and more liberated, and more free, and more open to other perspectives, and leaving art where it is, not looking to art to be responsible for our experiences and our realities. Um, it's rather unfair. I'm sorry that this particular woman had went through bottles being thrown at her and being pushed up against the wall for trying to use the bathroom. These are experiences that are not uncommon towards trans women. From the moment the bathroom debate came up a few years ago, there was a lot of concern and worry. There are still people out there that believe that our community as a whole are full of perverts and full of predators and deviants, and we're just out to take all the kids and take their souls. Like, we're not Freddy Krueger. We're not Jason Voorhees. We just want to get jobs, equal pay, get promotions, work hard, do our gardening, bathe in peace, fill our gas tanks, and be left alone. It's, for the most part, a lot of us are just people trying to make a way in our life. And I understand it from that standpoint, but I also know that nobody else is responsible for our experiences outside of but us. Like, it's up to us to decide what our next steps are. Now, I definitely believe in freedoms and protections for those freedoms and rights and everything. I served in the military, and that gave me a bigger picture as to the purpose, and I will never argue with anybody about that. If this woman wants to protest or refuse to work with Netflix out of reaction or response to them endorsing and promoting and financing and paying Dave Chappelle for the special, she's well within her right to do that. I had to sit back and think, though, like, behind the scenes, the what's going on and what's happening, and how it's deja vu for me with it's similar parallels with how people responded and chose to respond towards like other mediums that were offensive to them. Um, Instead of really going deeper and going further, taking it up to the government and to representatives and actually going about substantial change for everybody in that demographic. I mean, if streaming was to die today, what's next? We here at I Refuse Podcast would like to take a moment to shout out clout chasers. So, I don't even know where to start with this because, it's very much a reality. But to the woman that put the baby on blast for, in her narrative, allegedly slid in her DMs, I guess to holler after trying to work with her husband. One thing I know, and two things for damn sure, is that usually when you want to put somebody on blast and feel validated in doing so, there are receipts, right? And secondly, if it's about that particular situation, it starts and ends there instead of going on a multi-post tirade. Now, I am not a DaBaby fan, musically or personally. I just speak on other people's choice to, I guess, blast or make it publicly known that something happened and then have this narrative. Whether it's, alleged, whether it's definitely something that happened or, it's just narrative based, right? So, here's my thing. Like, what were you trying to get out of that? The baby tried to holler. Okay, what's next? Like, from other stories I've seen, people usually have like screenshots of a conversation that went back and forth. Like I'd seen something, and that's common on like Instagram if somebody really is about that life, and there's actually a two-way conversation. I mean, never mind the fact that anybody can make an IG account and say some stuff, but she didn't have any of that. And usually when celebrities do business or merge or something, there's usually a story that comes out of that. But it was clear after people had did some digging with this woman and, the actual behind the scenes, that was more so she did this to clout chase. DaBaby's still in controversy since his show where he made those statements. And then on top of that, to have Tory Lanez on stage with you, which that dummy violated his the stipulations of the restraining order that Megan filed, and is possibly looking at jail time. Hence the tweet that he sent out. A lot of people were like, "What does that mean?" Well, he violated his restraining order and could be looking at serious jail time. So that whole situation is never going to. People are never going to let up on the baby on that, as they shouldn't. But be very much aware that cloud chasing is a thing, and it's strictly social media based, and it's just as big a problem and an epidemic as everything else that goes on. That is just as problematic. People that have these regular everyday lives like you and I can't wait to turn around and get whatever possible attention they think they're going to get. Again, I'm not defending the baby guy, but cloud chasing is far and wide a separate problematic issue, just as big. And I just want to know, like, are we that bored? Like, she was like, no, no, no. I be damned. I'm nobody's bitch coming in to disrespect my husband and my marriage. Oh, no, no, no. And the posts, and I say posts with an S at the end because there are more than one, several paragraphs long. And they go on. And there's like a different photo with each one. Pictures of her and her husband is in one post. Pictures of her with their kids in another post. I was like, are we looking at an incident? Or are we trying to present something that benefits us? And mind you, just a DM. Just a DM. Which I believe if the person's not known to you, they automatically go to the folder that nobody pays attention to, like T-Pain. That shit was funny. And the way that the IG DMs are set up, you get a slight preview of the message in that box without having to actually open it. Just gonna say that was my mind was like, that's a little sus, girl. Like, what your true intentions are. Like, why even stick your neck out to be associated with that? Like, if it were me, I would gladly take my finger on and put it on the display, drag the message, and drop it, and keep it going. Like, business-wise, it's just not. I wouldn't even share that. He even hit me up. Just my 2 cents. This is the I Refuse podcast. This is Mr. Fox, and I will catch you guys later. We here at I Refuse podcast, although we like to talk about pop culture and things that happen to be serious, every once in a while we like to dedicate a segment of our videos to being petty. So here goes nothing. A lady hired as a wedding photographer decided to delete the entire gallery of wedding photos that she took after being denied food and beverage. Now I'm going to quickly run through this. Photographer deleted wedding photos after she was denied a break to get something to eat and drink. Let's see. She took to Reddit, right, to explain the whole story, right? She said she had been working for 6 hours straight as a favor. I'll indicate later why that's a problem. For a flat rate of $250. which the couple said is nothing for a 10-hour event. She's not really a photographer, she's a dog groomer. She takes pictures of dogs and uploads them to her Instagram and Facebook, right? After snapping photos throughout the ceremony and the reception, she was looking forward to eating and taking a break. However, her request was denied by the bride and groom. She was told she could not stop to eat, just focus on being a photographer. They never even saved her a spot at the dinner table. She was also told by the groom that she could not leave to get food. After reaching her tipping point, she deleted all the wedding photos that she took that day. Now, I totally get it. I am on the side of the photographer because here's the thing. Favor or not, that's still labor. And you hired me for a 10-hour event, right? 10 hours. That's beyond 8 hours. And the flat rate of $250, which is a steal for a wedding photographer, right? Whether it's by hobby, trade, or whatever, you hired me as a wedding photographer. And at a steal of a price. Now, I've been to many weddings before. I've even been part of the wedding party, spoken at weddings, things of that nature. Different kind of situations where it was at like a lodge or a golf resort or in Vegas, right? Now, I'm aware that, it doesn't go into specifics as far as what the wedding, as far as the budget, was it a food per plate, and that was their reasoning for telling her no. Regardless of that, the food gets thrown out, what's not eaten. And it's like, you are working this woman for 10 hours, up to 10 hours, taking pictures from the preparations, the behind the scenes, to the actual ceremony, to the reception, the dancing, the drinking, everything that happens that day. Because, a wedding is a whole production. So, I would have did the same thing. Like, not even a snack throughout the day, not even like a cooler that she can run to get some water. Like, not even throughout the day, not even like in the room where you guys are putting the makeup on, not even thinking, not even being really considerate, you know what I mean? Like, everybody else that's actually part of the wedding or the reception or whatever, get food and drink, whether or not they paid. It is not out of your way to give this woman, who essentially is getting a lowball rate or a lowball pay for a whole entire day of wedding photography, to give her a plate and something to drink and a place to sit. That was crazy. Listen, if I'm ever in that position, yeah, just know this: there will be a problem. I can't imagine being on my feet all day, all over the place taking photos, and you're not, and that's a problem for me to ask. So here's the other side of the thing. Like, well, I would have done the same thing. I'd said earlier that she did it as a favor. Now, if you paid attention to an earlier video, actually I think it was my last video, about how we do favors or we loan people stuff and like in return they're mean during the course of the time. And we're friends. she was definitely being taken advantage of, I think. Um, like I said, it's not out of your way for food and drink to offer it and give it to her because all that food and stuff is going to end up in the trash. It's not eaten. And to work a 10-hour day, I'm pretty sure that's a labor code violation. Um, but we got to be very careful, especially with friends and especially with our energy, because that's a lot of time. First of all, to put yourself in the mindset beforehand, prepare yourself for this day, and to actually be on your feet for 10 hours, and whether it was in the middle or towards the end, you had me locked in for an entire day. That's a physically demanding, just to be alive that long. Just to be alive that long and at one place and be locked in for that long. Can't go anywhere because you're doing this job, and people are just like, well, focus on being a photographer. Like, I'm not gonna just stand around the tent or walk around the tent and take photos of y'all eating, and you're not gonna at least think, damn, we might want to feed her too. And I'm pretty sure that they were like that at the beginning of the day. They were like that throughout the day. And I know damn sure they were like that after. Like, after the ceremony into the reception towards this woman. And it's all about, like, how they get when they're familiar with you, or they think they're as familiar and comfortable with you to say and treat you any kind of way. Favor or not, paid or not, people lose their minds. And, I understand that a wedding is pretty stressful and people's attitudes can be really short, out of stress, out of worry. But, like, the reception's after the wedding, the dinner's after the wedding. So, like, you're in a different mood, like the party and all this other stuff. Give that lady a plate of, rice, or what do they call it? Rice pilaf, uh, a 3 ounce or a 5 ounce piece of salmon, probably was unseasoned, and some roasted asparagus, and let her get like a Gatorade or a Corona or a Heineken or a nice refreshing bottle of Evian. I mean, that's the least you could do. But see, you give people an inch and they take a fucking yard. So yeah, I would have did the same damn thing. Like, come on, you taking advantage, and you lowballing me? Oh no. Like, why would you be against your photographer eating at your event? Why? Because we're friends. It's and people try to, I guess, manipulate it, or with certain words like, oh, it's not included. That wasn't the agreement. That wasn't the deal. Um, or try to say on the back end, oh, you knew what it was when you came over here. Like, you convince your friend who's a dog groomer to be the photographer at your wedding for 8 hours for only $250 no less, and refuse to feed her or him. Why is there even and I can see both sides? Like, what people don't understand is that above and beyond paying all vendors associated with your event, if there is food and drink, you're required to feed them and make sure they're hydrated. Because God forbid, right? God forbid you have me at your event. You hired me, right, to be at your event for a work day and a half. So almost 12 hours. Hell, a work day, 8 hours. And you didn't think, oh wow, we should probably feed the DJ. We should probably feed the lighting people. We should probably feed, since they're working, right? It's not like you're at the golf resort or the country club and the people that put up the lighting and the tents ahead of time and are nowhere around. Like, you have to go out of your way to go back to the main house where the employees are and feed them, because they're probably already gone. Like, that's so on that side. It's like they work to do this, and that's part of their day, and then they leave, whether it's food and drink wherever they go. No, you actually hired people to stay, whose part of their job is to stay at the event and keep the crowd entertained, or keep to collect the memories that are happening on this entire day, not to feed and hydrate them. Y'all better than me. Y'all are better than me. You damn right. Like, I will do my 8 or 10 hours, and I will delete all the photos from the camera. Give them an inch and they take a whole football field. Like, this person could have really took an extra mile and took them to People's Court. Oh, that would have been a fun ass episode. Please go on Judge Mathis. Go on Judge Mathis so he can say for a half an hour, inquire whether or not these people are crackhead. Oh, that would have been hilarious. Because no person in their right mind would be that neglectful and inconsiderate and borderline disrespectful. I hope y'all don't blame this kind of shit on quarantine or the pandemic, or try to play the victim when the news outlets come around wondering, why? Why are you doing this? That's why this story is is the reason why I limit my favors. I don't even let people borrow my CDs. Family either. I'm not giving you a ride nowhere, because the moment I say yes, it's never from point A to point B. It's always en route to point B that you got to make 3 or 4 other stops. Oh, can we go here? Can we go here? Can we go here? Can we go here? It's always funny, like, people plan out your day on your day off. That's why I don't care if they don't have a car. I don't care if it's in the shop. People will find a way to milk it. Like, I'm not. You better ask your mammy or your boyfriend. Because people will try it. People will try it. This is a mess. And this is probably why. This is another reason why people can't find any help or find employees to hire or want to work, because they want to lowball the pay and maximize the physical work, the physical labor. But y'all gonna learn in this Ponderosa, this pandemic more, that y'all can approach us the same way, like I did before. Pay us a lowball salary, a lowball hourly wage, and think you gonna work me to death? a lot of us make more on unemployment than we do working full time. And then you're not going to pay us hazardous pay for being around people's funky breath? The nerve. I mean, some people out here smell like old gym mats and old bus seats. But we're going to put that in the box and put it aside for a future video. You know, I started off, a month ago on this channel, revitalizing it, talking about how D-whites do not bathe and how their default BO smells like wet dog, wet bologna with the red band, and old bus seats. But the few views I got on that, y'all didn't hear me. Get around them after it rains. Get around them in school after a couple of days. Just the first week. I'm just saying. Old bus seats. This has been another petty moment by the I Refuse podcast. I want to dedicate this part of the video to one Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, who decided to get her Hellman's tailored rainbow dress wearing ass up on The View and felt in the moment to come for Whoopi on The View. Let me tell you something. So, in light of the conversation at the table amongst The View co-hosts and some of the people from Shark Tank, Draymond John, who was behind FUBU, and this Barbara Corcoran lady, and I think it was another person from the show, Shark Tank, on there. Whoopi made a comment in light to COVID week that, you know, the COVID body, which is a term for those of us that have gained a considerable amount of weight, I myself included. Now, she said it in a way where she was referring to her and Anna. And she threw something there about pants. So Barbara Corcoran decided this was the perfect time to inject herself into the conversation. Mind you, the comment wasn't directed at her at all. It was just something, you know, just said in jest. But for her ass to say, you know, when you're done with your pants, I'll take them and make them into 2 pairs. Now, bitch, why? And here's the thing, like, it's a common theme in life. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. When black people are joking, or, you know, a black person is on the receiving end of, I guess, a talking to or a joke, and then like a third party on the outside, person on the sideline just watching, decides not only to inject themselves into what's going on, but make it more cringeworthy. And I know goddamn well, I've been on the receiving end of it in the military. It's common, where I'm just like, okay, you really out here trying to embarrass me in front of all these people. And there was an immediate reaction as soon as Barbara Corcoran said what she said from the audience, the look on Whoopi's face, and then Anna came back and said, Jill Biden and another white woman wore that same dress before, implying no individual style. Which, I'm like, you make all that money, you sit your ass up on that chair on Shark Tank, implying you've made all this money in your life, and your style game is like every day. Your style game is like everyday person, but then you want to get on somebody about their weight and their clothes. And you want to do it towards Whoopi of all people. That's like when that Wanda lady down on the radio show tried to go back and forth with Cat Williams and failed miserably. I so bad want Whoopi from 1984 to come back. Just make an appearance from here and there on The View. But to all my people out there, to anybody watching this, if comedy, if making jokes is not your thing, you probably shouldn't probably shouldn't say anything towards an actual comedian. And E got at that. And it makes you wonder, like, how is she behind doors, behind closed doors? What does she really think? How does she really feel? Can't help but wonder, like, do people actually think, a lot more people actually think they're better than us? You know, little microaggressions or whatever. So I was like, okay, this is what we doing? And I know social media dragged the dog fuck out of Barbara Corcoran. Never really paid much attention to her or Shark Tank as a whole, because it's more about the drama than actual results. Like, as long as that show has been on, I can probably count on one hand how many people have actually made it to being an actual, like, commercials, advertising, and actually being on shelves. And it had been so long since I watched Shark Tank, I was like, actually in the story before it hit me, oh, this used to be on Shark Tank. But I can count on one hand how many times that's been the case. So I don't know what's going on over there. But yeah, that was totally uncalled for. You know, people in the comment section of the love B. Scott. Shout out to B. Scott, whom I love. I'm a huge fan of B. Scott. People were in the comment sections either downplaying it or having some expectation that it should have been handled better, or it wasn't as bad as it was, or, you know, she didn't mean it. And I'm just like, it was totally unnecessary, and it was so cringe. Left field, and women to women, like, that's just never a good look. And it, you know, her classism and elitism really leapt out at that table. And it's just as quick. You know, it doesn't take long for it to jump out. You know, what I realize in life is that there are people out here trying not to appear a certain way, but end up showing you, which is the same damn thing. The nerve. Like, you're not even funny. Basic at best. And that's all I got. I'm Mr. Fox, and this is the I Refuse podcast, and we will see you guys later. Be sure to follow, subscribe. The information's on this side right here. Bye.